Kels Goodman, welcome to Mormon Life Hacker. It's good to have you on, the executive director of the LDS Film Festival.
That's right. Thank you for having me, John and Jenny.
It's good to be with you. Jenny Dye, welcome.
Thank you, John Dye.
So, Kels, the LDS Film Festival coming up in not long from now. Tell us a little bit about it. What do we need to know? Dates, location, some of the basics.
Okay. Well, basically, it starts Monday night on February 24th, and it will go all week till Saturday night. And as it gets progressive to each day, it'll be longer and longer programs. And basically, the programs kind of go like this. Monday night will be a free night, which will be showing God's Army. And that's kind of to get everybody hyped up for the rest of the week. And so we figure, hey, family home evening night, come on out to a movie and meet Richard Dutcher and anybody else that might have been in God's Army who's available. And then as we go through the week, we're going to be showing new films at night. And some are new, like nobody's ever seen them. And some have been out that are recent, like, Fighting Preacher or Out of Liberty. And then during the day, we're going to be seeing, earlier in the day, we'll be seeing some short films, whether they be documentaries or short dramatic films. And then earlier in the day, we're going to be doing what's called something new, a festival flashback, where you'll be able to, because it's the 20th anniversary of God's Army, you'll be able to see movies like Singles Ward and The Best 2 Years and Saints and Soldiers. And each of those will have either a director or an actor or both come and do a Q&A afterwards, just to kind of give a background on the effect it had during for LDS cinema. And so that's kind of the bulk of it. And then on Saturday night will be our awards show for best film in their various categories.
Wonderful. Jenny, as you look at these films, I assume you can see these films that we have up, the festival flashback. Which ones particularly stand out to you? Which ones did you enjoy?
Let's see. I can see God's Army. What else do I see there? Singles Ward.
We have Brigham City.
Brigham City.
Saints and Soldiers.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And The Best 2 Years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, of course, Singles Ward, I think, was actually the first one that I personally saw. But I mean, there's a lot to talk about and a lot to draw from as far as, what'd you say, Kels? Years since God's Army?
It's very, yeah, I liked God's Army, and Best 2 Years was one of my favorites. I really enjoyed that one. And also I really liked Saints and Soldiers. Enjoyed Singles Ward. They all have kind of their own flavor. And I directed one of those. I directed one called Handcart, which was my first theatrical feature that I did. But yeah, they all are fun. And there were others that we would have loved to have shown, but just for time, purposes, those are the ones that we were able to get for this round.
Yeah, that's good. Saints and Soldiers, the first one that you'll be showing, for me, Matt Whitaker, I believe, was the screenwriter on that. He scripted that, and that by far is one of the most powerful LDS films I've seen. I think that's it in one of my top two that I love. So they did a great job with that, I thought.
Yeah,
Kels,
it's really good because it has it really crosses over to other faiths. It's really, really well done. So.
Absolutely. If I remember, that almost received an R rating. Do you remember that?
Yeah, actually, I think I heard that. I didn't know the details on it. What's really cool is at the festival this year, those flashback films are actually going to be presented by the BYU Special Collections Department at the library. And each of them, they're going to be, they're these cool nerd guys that are at BYU who know everything about any film. And they have all these great, papers of Cecil B. DeMille and Jimmy Stewart. So they're very big wealth of knowledge. They're going to come and share a little bit of each of those films, a little background, and I believe that will probably be one of the things we discuss. Will be the possible R rating that movie got.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. So you've been involved in the festival how many years, Kels, now?
I've been involved for let's see, probably about 14 years, 15 years, and I owned it. I've owned it for about 3. So
Wonderful. What is the goal for you of the film festival? What is success to you? This year, if you hold it, obviously you want to get a certain number of people, but the film festival itself, why was that even started? Why have you been involved this many years? What do you hope to get from it?
well, that's an interesting question because when Christian Vawisa owned it, he's a good friend of mine from BYU days. And every year when we get into the festival, we sit and we go, okay, is this our last year? Is LDS cinema kind of dying off? Is there, and then always at the last minute, this big flood of just films that people have been making show up. And I try to encourage every year now that I took over is to not act like it's going away, but act like we're trying really hard to blend in with the general public. One of our biggest missions is to help people to produce better quality movies so that because we're always competing against Hollywood, and it doesn't mean you have to spend Hollywood dollars or have Hollywood stars, but that what do people do on a Friday night and what are they going to watch? And a lot of times when they go see LDS movies, they kind of go as a courtesy, like, oh well, I'm going to see this guy in my ward who happens to be in this movie and we're going to go support him and blah 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 blah. But nobody says that when you're going to see Avengers or when you're going to go see Star Wars or anything like that. They go because they want to be there, and we need to get our films to a point to where they're to that caliber where they want to go see them and not just doing it because they're trying to do it as a favor, because they're LDS also. So
Yeah,
Kels,
you may. Oh, your turn.
are there some elements that you see that make a quality LDS film? I mean, whether that's something that carries over from, I think you differentiated it by describing it as a Hollywood film. What are the things that make an LDS film an LDS film? Like, what is it, that makes it stand out or be, I don't want to say set apart, but stand apart from the crowd, that kind of, I guess would make it qualify to be in a part of the festival, but also that makes it successful.
well, honestly, um, about 30% of our movies that come through the festival actually have any kind of LDS theme. A big portion don't, and it's because you're seeing the filmmakers kind of branching out and doing. We have a lot of films on topics today like race and gender and things like that sometimes people struggle with having those discussions. And as a member of the church, you want to be able to um, use the doctrines to be able to live real life. And I think you're seeing, to make a film successful in the LDS world, you got to be able to get a piece of real life. I think one of the successful movies in the LDS cinema would be Scera Approach, and one of the reasons is that it's a real life story that isn't all about getting somebody baptized. It's all about missionaries turning to God during a tough time. And to me, that could be anything really. It could be all kinds of stories can live with that. And so I think that as it evolves, to me, Serotonin Approach is a real good turning point in LDS cinema. It's actually the one movie that made me go, okay, we're back in the game. I think we have, because it not only was successful technically and screenwriting wise, but it was also successful financially. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. A lot of people say we don't like LDS cinema because You just need to write better stories. You need to make better movies. But that's one half of it. The other half is selling it. You got to sell it. You got to know who's going to see it, and you got to answer all those distribution questions that a lot of LDS films don't do very well at. And so we're hoping that the festival will help answer some of those questions. In fact, we're doing 2 panel discussions that are going to be different this year. One of them is on navigating distribution, because if you can't distribute your movie, then the best movie in the world is not going to get seen. The second is adapting to the Christian market, because the Christian market right now is hot, and the faithful of the Christian world, they're not afraid to go on the pulpits and say, "Hey, let's go see Courageous or whatever, or fighting, Facing the Giants, Fireproof." Those are financially successful movies. We struggle with the financially successful movies, so everybody's afraid to spend any money because they're afraid they're going to screw it up. But they want to do it anyway. And so there has to be a level that we have to get to be able to spend enough money, but also be ready to make that kind of money, to not be afraid to do that. And because it takes it, you got to have the money to be able to produce these things. So good story and a good business model to go along with it. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, that great question. That was along the lines of a question I was going to ask, which is back to the injunction almost that we were given by President Kimball, right? That there would be great artists that flourish and that come from the Mormon culture, and that actually put out great art into the world, and therefore were known by the fruits of our labors, so to speak, from an artistic perspective. So I do like that. I think you do need, obviously, a good story on one hand, but again, without good distribution, it doesn't matter if you have the best content in the world if no one sees it. So great thought. Kels, another question for you. So um, as you enter this year's festival season, you've talked about some differences, some changes that you've made over past years. Um, what do you think as we look at the market in general? You talk about screenwriting, you talk about some of these basic distribution questions and other things. What is the one or two key things that you think that we need, in addition to good storytelling and distribution, to really burst that bubble outside of creating art that is LDS art, but art that just happens to be LDS in nature? What are some other key things, in addition to distribution and storytelling alone, that you think we're missing, something that would help us break out kind of the other side of heaven? The first one that Mitch put out 17 years ago now, I guess, that would help us really surpass kind of the LDS genre.
Well, you mentioned the two, and that is the story and the business model, which are very important. The filmmakers need to not be afraid to say, a film that I write may not be a film that everybody wants to see. What does everybody want to see? And so you ask that question. And that way, when you write your film, you should be thinking distribution while you're writing your movie. Literally, you should don't think about distribution after you're all finished. You should be thinking distribution at the beginning. The other thing is, here's an interesting dichotomy. Look at the Kendrick brothers. And I studied them. Every movie they got, I always read everything about that movie or watched their behind the scenes or anything. I've tried really hard to find out, because they have a system down that now PureFlix has kind of dived into, and others, where they can make a movie for a couple $1,000,000, and they can turn around and make about 20 million, 30 million bucks. And I hate putting the numbers to it, but that's the reality of it. And when they do that, they are considered successful, and they can keep doing it, which is a big mistake. A lot of filmmakers go through this. LDS filmmakers go through sophomore slump, but one of the things that I noticed that they do that I think we're afraid of is, I think we're afraid in the stories to be LDS. I think that we have a struggle with our identity as filmmakers, and I get it. I get why, because it's a marketing thing. I totally get it. But when you watch the behind the scenes of all of the Kendrick brothers movies, every one of them give the glory to God. They say, oh, you know, we had a tough day. This day we were filming this scene, and we decided to get together and hold hands, and you could see them like praying. And I'm from the South, so I mean, I get, you know, I'm from both Virginia and Texas, and I served my mission in Louisiana, and so I'm a Southern boy, and I enjoy seeing my good Southern brethren get together, stand in a circle, hold hands, and say a prayer and say hallelujah, because they're speaking to the same God, and they're not afraid to say that they're praising the Lord in their films, and that yet they make a lot of money. We're kind of skittish. We're kind of afraid to say, oh, this is an LDS film. We're real afraid to do that. And I think because we do that, we shoot ourselves in the foot, because then the audience doesn't know what we are. And so because we do that, you know, so we have, if you're going to make a film in the LDS world, you need to define what that movie is. Is this an LDS film? Don't be afraid that it is an LDS film. If it's not, it's okay. Just focus on that market that you're in. But don't try to be in the market, but try not to be in the market. Don't do that. And too many LDS people are doing that, because we have had some misses when it comes to LDS cinema, but not every movie is going to be perfect. Hollywood still doesn't get it right. They still pump out a lot of crap. Even though it might, you know, look nice, they still lose money. And so we should be allowed to experiment and figure it out and do better the next time, and not be afraid.
Let me ask one other question. Just from the quality of a film, what is the single most important element to ensure that you see success with a film? If you had to boil it down to what the foundation is that we're creating, what is the single most important piece?
Well, most filmmakers will tell you story. That's what they will tell you, and I will agree with that to a level. And it in my personal opinion, it's actually that's a hard question to answer, because there's such a combination. You can have a really good story, but if you have a terrible actor that comes in and does a terrible job, that movie's over. And so all those elements have to be in place. Story is the beginning part, is a story that everybody's going to want to hear about. And you could have an amazing script, but if that actor comes in and squeaks their lines out, and they were only hired because they were somebody's daughter or somebody's grandson or something, all the good story in the world is not going to save it. So
Good call. Good call. Jenny, any final questions on your end?
If there's one thing you want people to know about the LDS Film Festival, what is it?
um, come and help us know what we can do better, and support us when we try, because we're
Excellent.
there for you, you know. So
Wonderful. Great point. And let me ask you, and I'll end with this question as well. Um, what are you personally most excited about this year? You talked about some changes in the festival, but as the executive director, what are you most excited about, either from an audience perspective or just from a festival perspective?
probably two things. One is I'm excited about the celebrating of 20 years of LDS cinema, with Richard Dutcher coming and Singles Ward, and these are my friends, and so every year it's like a family reunion. So that's the one thing that the other one, the second one that I think would be, what I did this year also different was, want to put a lot of emphasis on education of filmmaking. The celebration of the 20 years is for the audience. So we want them to come and have a good time and enjoy it. And don't think about filmmaking, just think about enjoying and meeting the directors. But then there's the educational side, where we're pushing discussions about adapting to the Christian market, learning to distribute our films, and we just want to do a better job. And I hope to, I've made losers, I've lost money in the film business, and I'm done losing money in the film business. I'm here to and hopefully not see people see me be money grubbing, but actually making something good, and then it succeeds so we can do it again and again. And that's what we want to teach the filmmakers to do, is to do it again and again.
I love that. Thank you. That's a great way to go out, because to be successful as a genre within our religion specifically, this needs to be scalable. It needs to be replicable. You need to make sure if you put $1 in, you at least get $1 out, right? $1 out of it,
Yeah.
so that we can continue to do this. I totally agree. So thank you. I think you hold a very important place in the arts, in our religion, in Mormonism. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you guys for spreading this out and being a part of it. And it's a weight to carry, and I didn't want to. I don't really consider myself anything great, but there's some great filmmakers out there, and they need to be celebrated. So thank you very much for that kind of discussion. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Kels.
Thanks, Kels.
thank you guys.